picking up where we left off on your monthly category comparison. So for our categories, right now it's showing we've paid rent and utilities, and you can see down here if you highlight rent and utilities, or rather you can highlight over here, it'll show you the percentage of your budget that was spent on that. And go ahead and come up here to our categories, and we can choose to only select certain categories. So if you only wanted to see one or two categories, you could do that. Each time you make a change to your ledger or your budget, when you want to look at your charts, you're going to need to do an update charts. And this will then include your new information. So you see now, groceries are included. In addition, you can come up here and select which bank account you want to use and by date. This goes the same for your bank account and category comparison. This is showing what Sally has spent in which categories and what John has spent in which categories. And again, we can select the date or we can select individual categories. If we come back over here to our overview, we've entered a little more information. I'm going to go ahead and enter one more thing into February. I'm going to go ahead and enter in Sally spending some money as well. She's going to go ahead and pay power again. Now, Sally is budgeting to only pay $200 in power. The reason for this is because she already knows that she budgeted $250 last month. She only had to pay $200 and her balance was $50. So now she knows to only budget $200, and that should cover it. If we look here, we see rent, that's zeroed out. So we know that was the exact amount we needed to use in order to cover rent. So we'll go ahead and budget for that again. As we change months, we can easily see different things reflected. So if we move over to March, March is our primary month. We see what we budgeted for in February, but we also see what we have or haven't budgeted for in April. If you come up here, you can change which bank account you want to review. So maybe we just want to look at what Sally spent, or maybe we want to look at all and see what was spent on just our weekly budget. Now in this case, we've only used the weekly budget, so that's the only one we need to worry about. Had we entered information on the bi-weekly budget, we would need to see that. However, it does still show what we actually spent. The only thing that changed was what we budgeted for. And come back over here to our ledger, and we can look and see that we also need to be able to enter some type of income, because again, these are our hard numbers on the ledger, and our budgeting is strictly that. It's our soft numbers, our budgets. So let's say in January, John went ahead and got paid that paycheck. So let's go over here and see how much that was for. So let's say he budgeted $500. We're going to come over here to our ledger. We're going to do other. Now you can easily add income or however you want to categorize it. I'm going to put paycheck, and let's say he actually only got $489.52. Now that entered that into our budget. If we look up here, oh, I apologize. We need to enter this as a negative. I did this backwards. Instead of having the expenses as negative and the incomes as positive, I thought it would be easier to only have to enter a negative from time to time, as opposed to entering it nearly every entry. So I come back over here to our weekly budget, and you see that has been added to John's hard number. We're going to want to go ahead and go down here and zero out that budgeted amount, because now it's no longer a budgeting item. It is physically in our bank account. It is in our ledger. That is the same with any item being budgeted. Once it has entered into the ledger, you want to make sure you come over here and change its status or zero it out. In the case of scheduled income, you'll zero it out. In the case of expense items, you're going to want to mark it as paid. The reason there's a difference between the two is because in our overview and our charts, we still want to see this number and see what we've budgeted. Especially in our overview, we want to know what we budgeted first versus what we actually spent. Finally, let's go over changing your income and category expense information. So here we have our income categories. If we have two options, we can update an existing. So let's say test 2, we want to change to test. We're going to update that. Now we can see in this list is represented as test, but if we also come down here, oh, I apologize. Here it is test. Now the same thing with expenses. You can select a current expense, change it, and update the category. For both income and expense, you also have the option to strictly enter a new expense. So let's do a test here. We can add this category, come down to our expenses, and we now see test represented. These options aren't every single one of your spreadsheets. However, you only need to change it in one place, because whatever you change on any tab, it is automatically going to change on your other spreadsheets. If we come over here to our ledger, here we can update our bank account information. This will rarely need to happen, but if you do need to change John or Sally's information, you hit this, it'll show your starting bank account information, and you can change that here and hit update. And again, your expense category information is here. So if you wanted to go ahead and add a new category, and in this case, yes, we're adding income to expenses, but that's strictly for the purposes of our ledger. So we can add that category. We come over here, and instead of that being other, we can change it to income.